Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is off today. Thank you very much for getting your morning started with us. We're going to begin this hour with a look at a full day of spectacle, symbolism, and diplomacy for King Charles and Queen Camilla, from a historic speech on Capitol Hill to a glittering state dinner at the White House. The king became only the second British royal to address Congress, using the moment to reflect on the deep ties between the United States and Britain.
The story of the United Kingdom and the United States is at its heart a story of reconciliation, renewal, and remarkable partnership.
King Charles also spoke of what he called a time of growing uncertainty, from the war in Ukraine to the conflict with Iran and fears of a wider crisis in the Middle East. The day ended with a state dinner hosted by President Trump and the First Lady, celebrating what both leaders called a lasting friendship between the two nations. But the visit is also unfolding against a backdrop of unanswered questions about the relationship between the king's brother, the former Prince Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, and the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. NBC News correspondent Tracy Wilkins has more.
After a full day of spectacle and speeches for King Charles and Queen Camilla, the evening was a celebration of the significant bond between the U.S. and Britain.
Ours is a treasured friendship, an eternal bond, and a true story of extraordinary heroism and skill.
Earlier in the day, both sides of the aisle rose in a resounding welcome for King Charles as he addressed a joint meeting of Congress, the first king to do so and only the second royal, the first, his mother, Queen Elizabeth.
It is an era that is in many ways more volatile and more dangerous than the world to which my late mother spoke in this chamber in 1991.
Though the king does not have political power, he made the point that America does, and with it, a responsibility.
America's words carry weight and meaning, as they have since independence. The actions of this great nation matter even more.
He reminded Congress that both nations have won wars together before addressing the ongoing conflict in Ukraine.
That same unyielding resolve is needed for the defense of Ukraine and her most courageous people.
Earlier in the day, survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse participated in a roundtable discussion and requested a meeting with the king. His brother Andrew was under criminal investigation and lost his royal title amid allegations of misconduct connected to Epstein survivors.
Virginia was recruited from a property owned by Donald Trump and trafficked to a member of the British royal family. Yet today, survivors are here, sitting with members of Congress, still fighting to be heard.
The king did not meet with the families due to legal constraints, per Buckingham Palace officials, but did address the issue in his speech.
It is the very fact of our vibrant, diverse, and free societies that gives us our collective strength, including to support victims of some of the ills that so tragically exist in both our societies today.
Tracy Wilkins, NBC News.
For more on the diplomacy, the politics, and the royal family dynamics at play here, NBC News royal contributor Daisy McAndrew joins us now. Daisy, good morning. Great to see you. Okay, so let's first talk this message to Congress from the king. It was about the bond between these two countries, also, though, about the backdrop of what's happening across the world, across the globe, really feeling increasingly unstable. What do you think he most wanted Americans to hear, and what do you think was a lasting message for members of Congress?
I certainly think there were many diplomatic messages contained within that speech. Obviously, one of the main ones was an ongoing friendship and a desire to continue with the so-called special relationship. But then there were very pointed and obvious comments, not least about Ukraine, calling on the United States to support the Ukrainians in their fight against the Russians. There was talk of NATO, again, underlining the importance as Brits as we look towards NATO and America's continuing involvement, and many other quite subtle but pointed messages. I think really one of the ones that got the biggest response within the room, within the chamber, was the one reminding the origins of Magna Carta, the origins of a separation of executive powers, and perhaps, again, quite a pointed comment that perhaps that separation has got somewhat blurred.
Daisy, then let's talk quickly. The state dinner, we saw jokes, toasts, this gift to President Trump. What did that moment tell you about the personal dynamic between these two men, and then also the bigger relationship between the two countries?
There was a lot more warmth, I think it's fair to say. Definitely more jokes and more humour in the toasts at that state dinner. Many, many jokes. And also Charles really trying to do his best self-deprecation, which is where a lot of his humour comes. You could see the twinkle in his eye, the sort of pulling the president's leg, whether it was about commenting, saying, you like to say that we in Europe would talk German if it wasn't for your interventions. Well, you in the United States maybe would be talking French if it wasn't for our intervention in the early 19th century. So there were jokes like that. And I think on the whole, they landed pretty well. We know that Donald Trump has a huge affection and loyalty and respect towards the and I think King Charles was really trying to use that to our best advantage.
Daisy, another thing of note, someone the king is not seeing on this trip, his son, Prince Harry, who, of course, lives here in the United States. How much of a story is that in the palace and in the UK?
Of course, there have been lots of people wondering whether that meeting would happen. And theoretically, timetable-wise, it absolutely could have happened. But I think it never was going to, because this is a visit. It's not a private visit by the king. This is a visit that the king is doing at the request of his government to try to strengthen political ties between the two countries. And if he had requested to carve out some time to meet his youngest son, Harry, during that timetable, that's where all the attention would have gone. You know, Savannah, that you and I would have been talking about that and not NATO and Ukraine and so on. And really, that's why the government would have pretty much vetoed any idea that that would happen, because it would have watered down the political impact of this trip.
A fair point, but certainly something a lot of people, I think, would like to see. OK, we should talk about the Epstein piece of this. There's this pressure on the king to meet with survivors tied to Jeffrey Epstein. He did not. How does the palace handle that, explain that in the midst of a high-profile visit like this?
Of course, we heard in Tracy's excellent piece just now where she was saying it was because of legal matters that the king and the queen couldn't meet Epstein victims or survivors. Now, of course, that is half the story. And it's a very, very difficult situation, particularly for Queen Camilla to be in, because she has made supporting domestic violence and sexual violence against women and supporting survivors a huge part of her public duties. She's talked about her own first-hand experience of sexual abuse, which was quite a thing over on this side of the pond. So we know that her heart is with those survivors. But again, politically, it would have overshadowed this visit. So I think that was a really difficult decision to make. We know at the garden party that they hosted, the King and Queen hosted at the embassy, the British embassy, charities and survivors were invited to that. And I think that was the nod towards the Epstein survivors. But that's a really difficult issue.
Daisy McAndrew, thank you so much. Of course, this continues today with the king coming here to New York City. We'll keep talking to you. We appreciate your time. Well, the Justice Department has once again secured an indictment against former FBI director and Trump critic James Comey. A grand jury handed up the 2-count indictment yesterday over this photo we're showing you right here. It's of seashells. Comey posted this on Instagram in May of last year with the caption, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." The shells, as you can see, are arranged to spell out 8647. DOJ officials allege that the message conveyed by the post amounted to a threat against President Trump's life. Comey, who once oversaw the FBI's investigation into Russian election interference in 2016 and who remains an outspoken critic of the president, is denying the charges.
Well, they're back. This time about a picture of seashells on a North Carolina beach a year ago. And this won't be the end of it. But nothing has changed with me. I'm still innocent. I'm still not afraid. And I still believe in the independent federal judiciary. So let's go.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News political reporter Megan Leibowitz. Megan, good morning. All right, so Megan, for anybody who maybe is just listening to us, not looking at the screen, doesn't really understand what this picture is or how a picture of shells could really amount to anything, explain what it is, what these numbers 86 and 47 next to each other may have meant, and what Comey is saying about this, the message that he's sharing and the charges he's facing.
Yeah, that's right. Good morning, Savannah. So he's facing 2 counts. This was a 2-count indictment. He's facing accusations of a threat to take the life of a president and also communicating that threat across state lines via that social media post. So this all dates back to that Instagram post where it said 8647. Now, for people who might not be familiar with what 86 means, it's commonly used in restaurants to mean that they're sold out of something, and it's also used informally to mean cancel or get rid of. So when he had posted this last year, it had created a lot of backlash from the right, people saying that this amounted to some kind of threat against the president. After that backlash, Comey very promptly deleted that post and said that he had not been aware that this had anything to do with political, that people had associated that term with violence and that he condemned violence of any kind as well. So in the aftermath of this latest indictment, he maintained his innocence, and his attorney also put out a statement. You can see that on your screen, where he said that Mr. Comey vigorously denies the charges contained in the indictment, adding, "We will contest these charges in the courtroom and look forward to vindicating Mr. Comey and the First Amendment." Now, both of these counts carry a maximum prison sentence of up to 10 years in prison if he is ultimately convicted of these charges. That's according to Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche in that press conference yesterday, Savannah.
Megan, an important component of this case is going to be whether the Justice Department can prove that Comey knowingly and willfully, that's the important part, made a threat against the president. What's the DOJ saying about evidence that they have?
Yeah, that's right. That phrase, knowingly and willfully, is going to be a key part of all of this. So yesterday in the press conference, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche did not share evidence that Comey had knowingly and willfully made that threat. He declined to say the type of evidence that the Justice Department would ultimately bring forward in that case. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell had also pressed Blanche on how the Justice Department will ultimately prove intent. Take a listen to how he responded.
There's been a tremendous amount of investigation. And how do you prove intent in any case? You prove intent with witnesses, with documents, with the defendant himself to the extent it's appropriate. And that's how we'll improve intent in this case.
Now, separately, Savannah, 2 senior law enforcement officials also telling NBC News that Comey is expected to turn himself in to federal authorities in North Carolina later this week.
Megan, also, Comey was indicted less than a year ago, and it's important to talk about this. This was charges of making a false statement to Congress and obstructing a congressional investigation. He pleaded not guilty. A judge then later dismissed that indictment, but the administration's appealing that decision. How are Democrats responding to this new indictment, and how is the fact that there's this shadow of this last one hanging over this impacting anything?
Yeah, that's right. Democrats are expressing a lot of criticism, painting this as yet another example of the Justice Department using the Justice Department to go after the president's political opponent. So we started to hear yesterday some reaction from Democrats on social media. I want to point you to a couple of those examples. One was from Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, where he accused the president of letting vengeance and vanity pervert our justice system, saying indictments on demand deeply degrade our democracy. Also, Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland calling this case a clear political persecution, also saying that the Justice Department continues to act as the president's personal attack dog and calling this blatant authoritarianism. Now, remember, the Justice Department has pursued cases against other opponents of the president before, including people like New York Attorney General Letitia James. That case had also, that indictment had been tossed, and the Justice Department is appealing that as well, among other cases.
All right, Megan Leibowitz, thank you so much. Well, NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris is here to help break this down and talk about how this could play out in court. Misty, good morning. Okay, we've got a lot to unpack. I'm happy that you're here. Thank you. Okay, let's start on how high is the bar for actually convicting someone in a case like this, which has to do with making alleged threats or over this picture of seashells.
Yeah, so this is really going to turn on the meaning of 86. So what the Justice Department will have to show is that James Comey intentionally threatened to kill or inflict serious bodily harm on the president. And the analysis is going to be whether or not this post was First Amendment protected speech or what we call a true threat. So if this is reckless, unprofessional, even malicious, that's not enough. It has to be an intentional threat to kill. And I think where the Justice Department is going to have their biggest hurdle is the ambiguity of the 86 and what that means. It has multiple meanings. And because of that ambiguity, it's not the friend of prosecutors who have to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Do you think the fact that this is the second time the Justice Department has indicted Comey and now on something entirely different is going to bear any weight here?
I think you're going to see that play out in motions filed by Comey's legal team to toss this indictment. They're going to be malicious, vindictive, targeted prosecution. His attorneys will argue that this is just another attempt in retaliation because Trump, obviously not a fan of Comey, tried the first time around with the prior indictment. It failed, and now they're just looking for another legal theory to try and go after him. So I think it's going to play out in pre-trial motions trying to get this indictment thrown out before it ever gets on its road to trial.
If you look at it through that lens, if it is the president directing his Justice Department to just find something on Comey, does this carry more water than the last one?
Well, what I think you see here is that it went before a grand jury. Probable cause was found. Probable cause, there's an old adage, you can indict a ham sandwich. But at the end of the day, this case, if it goes to a jury, has to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. And what prosecutors are supposed to look at the onset isn't, can we get it over the net from the grand jury perspective? It's, do we really think, based on all of the evidence that we have, that we could secure conviction? That's their ethical obligation. So looking at this is a tremendous uphill battle for prosecutors, unless there's something more, Savannah. I mean, this is just the indictment. Todd Blanchett said yesterday this was almost a year-long investigation. Could there be more out there? Maybe. If there's not, I don't expect this case to get too far.
All right, Mystic Maris, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, the battle between Jimmy Kimmel, ABC, and the White House is intensifying. Last night, the comedian doubled down during his opening monologue using a clip from President Trump's speech yesterday where he mentioned his parents' marriage. Take a listen.
They were married for 63 years. And excuse me, if you don't mind. That's a record we won't be able to match, darling. I'm sorry. It's just not going to work out that way.
Wait a minute. Did he just make a joke about his death? He should be fired for that. Only Donald Trump would demand I be fired for making a joke about his old age and then a day later go out and make a joke about his own old age.
Earlier in the day, the FCC directed ABC-owned and operated TV stations to renew their filing for their broadcast license renewals ahead of schedule. That unprecedented move seemingly designed to threaten Disney's ability to broadcast through its own TV stations. NBC News entertainment reporter Chloe Malas explains.
Pressure is mounting for ABC and Disney after an unprecedented move by the FCC, ordering all 8 Disney-owned local stations at major cities across the country to file early license renewals years before their expiration. If the renewals are not granted, they would lose their ability to broadcast. Tom Wheeler served as FCC chairman under President Obama.
Good question. Let me be real specific. It has been 40 years since the FCC revoked a license, a broadcast television license.
The FCC has been investigating Disney, the parent company of ABC, over its DEI policy since last year. A source with knowledge of the matter tells NBC News that Kimmel's recent comments about the First Lady will now be part of the review.
You know how sometimes you wake up in the morning and the First Lady puts out a statement demanding you be fired from your job?
Jimmy Kimmel addressing the latest controversy.
Well, I agree that hateful and violent rhetoric is something we should reject. I do, and I think a great place to start to dial that back would be to have a conversation with your husband about it. Because
this clash stemming from a joke the late-night host made last week in a sketch about the then-upcoming White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
Kimmel now defending his words.
It was a very light roast joke about the fact that he's almost 80 and she's younger than I am. It was not, by any stretch of the definition, a call to assassination.
Melania Trump called Kimmel's words hateful and violent rhetoric, sentiments echoed by President Trump, who demanded Kimmel's dismissal. The firestorm comes just a month after new Disney CEO Josh D'Amaro took the helm, and 7 months after ABC briefly suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live after controversial remarks about the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. In a statement to NBC News, Disney says they have a long record of operating in full compliance with FCC rules. I just want to point out here that ultimately, this could play out in the court system for years. And if a decision is made to not renew the licenses of these 8 Disney-owned and operated stations, Disney could appeal this decision, and then it would drag out even longer. And all the while, these stations could continue to be on the air. Back to you.
All right, Chloe, thank you. Well, overnight, another powerful line of storms swept across the South. Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued a disaster declaration for North Texas after a possible tornado tore through the town of Mineral Wells, damaging several neighborhoods. Officials say there were multiple injuries, but so far, no reports of fatalities, thankfully. Meanwhile, in Arkansas, a possible tornado was caught on tape. That storm also produced damaging golf ball-sized hail. In central Illinois, there was more damage as another storm system packing high winds toppled trees and destroyed several homes. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster is there with the latest.
Tornado sirens ringing out, dark clouds rolling over Bowie, Texas, as another round of dangerous severe weather sweeps through. Destructive hail slamming the nation's heartland from Arkansas.
We just got pelted in Missouri by a hailstorm.
To Missouri, hail cracking this car's windshield. This tree crashing into a home in Kalamazoo, Michigan. While in Kent County, police say a 39-year-old man died after being struck by a falling tree. Meanwhile, planes fighting a new wildfire in Miami-Dade County, Florida, as Georgia's wildfires rage on, the Pineland Road fire expanding to more than 32,000 acres. Back in the Midwest, strong winds leaving more than 200,000 without power. In Clifton County, Illinois, this funnel cloud seen through flashes of lightning. In Germantown, Illinois, where daylight revealed the devastation after a tornado tore through this community, this is what Michelle Welton's home looks like now, after she raced for shelter as warning sirens blared.
It was so fast, you know. We just heard glass and everything crashing.
The roofs of several homes there now gone, her neighbors spending the day coming together to clear debris. How do you rebuild?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Our thanks to Shaq for that report. Well, we've got the details now on what to expect from that storm system making its way east with our Morning News Now weather. Angie Lassman joins us this morning. Angie, good morning.
Hey there, good morning. We've got another day of kind of some showers and thunderstorm activity, end of severe weather risk. Here's what's going on as we take a peek outside right now. Notice some of those showers and thunderstorms centered across the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and really some rumbles of thunder and some lightning across parts of the southeast. Atlanta waking up to wet weather, Jackson, Cincinnati as well. You'll notice some wet roads in Detroit too. The severe risk not quite as impressive as it has been over the past really 6 days or so. Today we've got still the hail on the table and some gusty winds, but tornado risk is low, and it's generally going to be across parts of the mid-Atlantic and parts of the South, specifically the Gulf Coast stretching out to the southeast and parts of the southern plains. And here's why. We've got this kind of cold front that's going to be shifting its way farther to the east. It brings some of that rain to the northeast and some of those storms along and ahead of it. And same story down across parts of the Gulf Coast where we'll see those downpours ongoing through the day today. By tomorrow, more of that rain beneficial at that for parts of the South, and we'll see some additional rain across parts of New England. And we keep that rain going across those same regions across the South by the time Friday rolls around. So finishing out April with some really unsettled conditions across that region. It'll be beneficial in both the Northeast and across the South, but we could, of course, see some of those flooding conditions across parts of the Gulf Coast. Meanwhile, chilly temperatures are in place, and they're going to stay with us. We've got 50s in Minneapolis today, below normal temperatures in Cincinnati, 58 degrees in Atlantic City today, and even by tomorrow, most of the country really looking at below normal conditions. 60s for Wichita, 57 in Chicago, 69 degrees in Nashville, and then cooler and average conditions as we roll through the end of the work week and into this upcoming weekend. 53 on Saturday in Cleveland. We've got upper 50s for Saturday in Philadelphia, and Sunday ending up into those 60s. Still not holding on to those, flirting with at least those 70s on Friday and into Sunday, but Saturday we'll see some cooler conditions than normal in Charlotte. Back to you.
All right, Angie, thank you so much. We've got an update on that sprawling gambling investigation that led federal prosecutors to arrest dozens of suspects last fall. Former NBA player Damon Jones has pleaded guilty to federal charges for his role in separate schemes involving sports betting and poker. The 49-year-old was accused of giving inside information to gamblers and helping organize rigged poker games. Officials say the schemes brought in more than $10 million. Jones also tipped off gamblers before a 2023 game, knowing that Lakers star LeBron James was injured and would not play. During a court hearing yesterday, Jones apologized and admitted to providing that inside information. Jones was arrested last year as part of a probe into sports betting and illegal poker involving NBA figures and the mafia. Sentencing is set for next January.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.